always begins the same way. You wake with a start, sweat-soaked, heart pounding. For a moment, the darkness feels alive, like it's watching you back, and though you know it was just a dream, something in your bones says otherwise. A nightmare. But not just any nightmare. The kind that grabs you by the soul and shakes you awake. The kind that doesn't fade with the morning light. Why do we dream of falling, of being chased, of shadows and monsters that speak in riddles? Why do we create these horror films in our heads while our bodies lie still in sleep? Carl Jung called dreams the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul. Nightmares don't knock, they break down the door. Let's get something clear. Nightmares are not just bad dreams. They are emotionally loaded, symbolically dense messages delivered through the language of fear. While most dreams are forgotten before breakfast, nightmares linger like smoke after a fire. Dostoevsky wrote, "Man grows used to everything, the scoundrel. But can we ever grow used to facing the darkest corners of our minds? Imagine your unconscious as a locked basement. Nightmares are what happens when something buried there starts pounding on the walls. They're not malfunctions, they're alarms. But our culture treats them like glitches. Take a pill, distract yourself, shrug it off. Yet the unconscious keeps whispering, "Wake up, something's not right." And when whispers don't work, it starts to scream. Let's talk symbols. That dark figure chasing you might be the guilt you've buried, the crumbling house, a collapsing identity, the scream you can't make, an unspoken truth. Jung believed that dreams speak in symbols, not sentences. Nightmares are the most urgent messages in that symbolic system. They don't just scare you, they demand attention. There are things which a man is afraid to tell even to himself, Dostoevsky wrote, and every decent man has a number of such things stored away in his mind. Nightmares are the stories those hidden things tell, but what if they aren't just symptoms of stress or trauma? What if they serve a purpose? You see, there's a strange paradox in the world of dreams. The most terrifying visions may be the ones that heal us the most. Why? Because they force confrontation. They show us what we've ignored, denied, or run from. They drag the unconscious content into the spotlight screaming, "Look at this!" And what we confront can transform us. Take Raskolnikov, Dostoevsky's tormented protagonist from Crime and Punishment. Before he commits murder, he dreams of a little mare being beaten to death by drunken peasants. It is grotesque, heart-wrenching. He wakes in terror. The dream is not an echo. It's a warning, a prelude, a soul pleading for mercy. Nightmares can be prophetic, not in the mystical sense, but in the psychological one. They reveal the trajectory we're on, the self we are becoming, the fracture we are ignoring. In that sense, nightmares are not tormentors. They're messengers, and the scarier the message, the more important it probably is. Still think they're just dreams? Let me ask you this. What if the monster under your bed isn't there to hurt you? What if it's there to introduce itself? Jung described this darker side of the psyche as the shadow, everything we refuse to see about ourselves. And the shadow doesn't go away by being ignored. It waits, it watches, and sometimes it shows up in your dreams dressed as a monster. Until you turn around and face it, until you stop running. Nietzsche warned, "He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you." But what if that gaze is not hostile, but honest? Here's the hard truth. The nightmare knows you. It knows what you fear, what you repress, what you lie to yourself about. And still, it shows up, night after night, hoping you'll finally listen. You can ignore it, suppress it, medicate it, but it will return, louder, weirder, darker, until you confront it, not just in the dream, but in your waking life, because nightmares are not here to scare you. They're here to save you. Let's say it happens again. You're asleep, but something is wrong. You feel a weight on your chest. Your body won't move. You can't scream. You just know that something is in the room with you. And then it whispers your name. Sleep paralysis, a modern term for an ancient terror. Before science gave it a name, people called it the night hag, the Mara, the Alp, the incubus, evil spirits that sat on your chest and drank your breath. It doesn't matter if you were in 13th century Scandinavia or ancient Japan, the story was the same. Something came to you in your sleep, and it wasn't friendly. The Norse feared the Mara, a ghostly figure that would trample sleepers, crush their ribs, and inject their dreams with horror. In the Ynglinga saga, King Vanlandi is attacked in his sleep by one. It presses down on his head, then his legs, until it finally kills him. "The Mara is treading on me," he said before he died. There is something universal in this terror, something older than culture, older than language. Nightmares are part of our mythological inheritance. Every culture has its monsters of the night. In Japan, there's the Baku, a strange chimera said to eat nightmares. But beware, if it's still hungry, it might devour your hopes and dreams too. In Jewish mythology, there is Lilith. Before Eve, there was Lilith, Adam's first wife. Created equal, she refused to submit and fled Eden. She became a demon of the night, a succubus, a baby stealer, a figure of sexual power and defiance turned into a monster. A woman who wouldn't be controlled became a nightmare. What does that say about us? Dostoevsky wrote, "Much unhappiness has come into the world because of bewilderment and things left unsaid. Perhaps nightmares fill in those silences. They tell the stories our cultures are afraid to say out loud. Nightmares are born in the collective unconscious. They wear different masks in different lands, but the emotion is the same. Fear of the unknown, of the other, of the self. And they evolve. In German folklore, the Alp slips through keyholes. In modern times, it's the alien abduction or the faceless figure watching you sleep. Same terror, different skin. We used to draw symbols on the walls, whisper prayers, clutch charms. Today, we install nightlights and refresh Reddit threads at 3 a.m. Different tools, same fear. But there's something deeper here, something more than just terror. Nightmares, especially in mythology, were warnings, initiations, trials. To be visited by a spirit in your sleep wasn't just a horror story, it was a turning point, a moment of contact with the sacred or the damned. Carl Jung wrote, "The dream is the theater where the dreamer is at once scene, actor, prompter, stage manager, author, audience, and critic. In that theater, the monsters are never random. They are always a part of you. The incubus, the demon, the ghostly rider. These are expressions of our own shadow. The parts of ourselves we deny, wrapped in myth and legend." Jung called this the archetypal realm, the place where ancient images live inside our psyche, the great mother, the trickster, the shadow, and yes, the nightmare. But not all of these tales end in tragedy. There's an old story about a man plagued by a Mara every night. He plugs every crack in his home, knowing they can slip through even a keyhole. One night, as the pressure hits his chest, his friend jams a stick in the door. The Mara is trapped. In the morning, he finds a naked woman asleep beside him. She becomes his wife. They live happily for years. Until one day he tells her how he caught her. He unplugs the door. She vanishes. What do we make of that? That some nightmares, when embraced, become something beautiful, something transformative? Maybe the same is true today. Maybe the nightmare isn't just something to run from. Maybe it's something to catch, to question, to integrate. Because what the ancients knew and we forget is this. Nightmares aren't enemies. They are thresholds. They ask you to pass through, to become something new. The myth is only half the story. The rest lies in your brain, and it gets even stranger. It begins in silence. Your heart slows. Your body sinks into stillness. You're no longer awake, but not quite gone either. Your eyes dart under your lids. The theater of the mind begins to flicker to life. You have entered REM sleep, and somewhere within that stage, the nightmare waits. Rapid eye movement, REM, is the dream maker, the strange neurological twilight zone where your memories, fears, hopes, and hidden wounds mix into a hallucinatory soup. Scientists once thought this phase was pure randomness. They were wrong. REM is where the brain rehearses, it processes, it tries to make sense of what cannot be spoken by day. The limbic system, especially the amygdala, our emotional alarm bell, goes into overdrive during REM. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, the seat of logic and reasoning, powers down. Translation? The part of you that feels is on fire. The part that thinks is asleep. This is why nightmares don't follow rules. why time loops, why places blur, why terror feels truer than truth. It's not chaos, it's theater, with a brilliant, if disturbed, director. Let's return to Dostoevsky. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov dreams of a horse being beaten to death. He's just a boy in the dream, powerless, horrified. He wakes up in torment. He hasn't committed a crime yet, but his unconscious already knows what he's becoming. The nightmare is not a reflection, it is a warning. REM dreams do this. They don't just show us what happened, they show us what might, or what we're afraid might. They model fear, then let us wake before the crash. They rehearse. It's the emotional equivalent of a fire drill. Children, interestingly, have more REM sleep than adults. Their boundaries between conscious and unconscious are thinner. Their monsters feel real because, to their brains, they are. Until you make the unconscious conscious, Jung wrote, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Nightmares are that unconscious, shouting. Sometimes it screams. There are many types of REM nightmares. The classic anxiety dream, showing up naked, late, or exposed. These dreams channel our fear of failure, shame, or social rejection. Then there are trauma nightmares. These aren't metaphors. These are relived memories. The soldier sees the blast again. The survivor feels the hands again. They wake, not confused, but devastated. PTSD patients often get stuck in REM loops. Their brains try to process what the conscious mind cannot, but it gets caught. The needle skips. The trauma replays. The dream is the small hidden door, Jung said, in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul. But some doors open to fire, so what can be done? One tool is lucid dreaming, becoming aware that you're dreaming while still inside the dream. The nightmare transforms when you turn and face it. A woman dreams she's chased every night by a shadow. One night, she turns and asks, "Who are you?" The shadow replies, "I am the part of you that never healed." The chase ends. REM nightmares, then, are not villains. They are messengers. They push us to recognize what we pretend isn't there. A man dreams of drowning, always the same, gasping, sinking, until one night he stops struggling. He breathes. He grows gills. It becomes a dream of transformation. This is the beauty buried in the terror. The body is paralyzed in REM, but the soul moves. Dreams take what's unbearable in the daylight and let us feel it safely in the dark. Not always kindly, but always meaningfully. Which brings us to a disturbing truth. If you silence your nightmares, you silence something sacred. If you listen to them, you just might change your life. Because nightmares are the brain's most honest stories. And honesty, as we know, is rarely comfortable. Some nightmares don't just visit, they move in. They return again and again, wearing the same face, whispering the same terror. You wake, not relieved, but exhausted. Because you know they'll be back. These are trauma nightmares, and they don't care what time it is. You might think you've moved on, that the event is over. But the unconscious doesn't follow the clock. It follows impact. In trauma, the mind gets overwhelmed. It can't process the experience like a normal memory, so it stores it differently, in fragments, sensations, images, panic without context. And when you dream, those fragments come out to play, not to hurt you, but to complete the story. Jung once said, "Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering." Trauma nightmares remove the substitute. They bring back the real pain, raw, unfiltered. A veteran dreams of the blast. A survivor dreams of the hallway. The details may vary, but the feeling is the same. Helplessness, horror, repetition. Freud called it the compulsion to repeat. Not because we want to, but because the psyche is trying to finish the unfinished, to restore the broken narrative. These aren't just memories. They are psychic landmines. One woman dreams she's screaming underwater. People are watching. No one helps. Years later, in therapy, she connects it to her childhood, to the silence that followed the violence. Her nightmare wasn't about drowning, it was about being unheard. Dostoevsky wrote, "There is no subject so old that something new cannot be said about it." Trauma proves that, because the old wound finds new forms, and the nightmare is one of them. So, how do we fight back? You don't fight, you witness. Writing about nightmares helps. Drawing them, telling someone, giving the terror a name. Some therapists use a method called imagery rehearsal. You rewrite the nightmare, change the ending. A man dreams of being chased night after night, until one day he imagines turning around. He faces the pursuer. It's a child, crying. The man hugs him. That night, the dream stops. Healing, you see, is not forgetting, it's remembering differently. Jung believed that trauma, when integrated, becomes fuel for transformation. The wound becomes the womb. It sounds poetic, but it's also neurological. The brain rewires through exposure. The more we reimagine the nightmare with agency, the less power it has. Even recurring nightmares can evolve. A woman dreams of birthing a snake. She wakes horrified. Over time, the snake becomes a baby, then a dog, then a guide. The terror softens. The symbol matures. The nightmare was never the enemy. It was the messenger. Dostoevsky once observed, "Pain and suffering are always inevitable for a large intelligence and a deep heart. Maybe the deepest heart is the one that learns to carry both." And this is what trauma nightmares offer us. Not escape, but encounter. They bring us face to face with the part of us we abandoned. They don't want us to suffer. They want us to remember, and through remembering, become whole. What if the nightmare isn't about the past at all? What if it's a glimpse of what hasn't happened yet? Precognition, synchronicity, and the dream that comes true. You might want to leave the light on for this one. Let me ask you something strange. Have you ever dreamed something dark, terrifying, and then watched it happen in real life? A plane crash you never should have known about. A face you dreamed about appearing days later in the crowd. A loss you felt before it arrived. Coincidence? Or is your unconscious picking up a frequency you didn't know existed? Carl Jung didn't think it was coincidence. He called it synchronicity, a meaningful connection between inner and outer events with no clear cause. He believed the unconscious could see around corners, that it operated not just as a mirror of the past, but a compass toward the future. Jung once dreamed of the sea turning red, of countless corpses, and the death of empires. Days later, World War I began. "You cannot doubt this," the dream voice told him, and he didn't. It's easy to dismiss precognitive nightmares as flukes, but they happen often enough to demand curiosity. Dostoevsky wrote, "The soul is healed by being with children. Maybe it's also healed by listening to what it says when we aren't." Take Abraham Lincoln. Days before his assassination, he dreamed of a funeral in the White House. When he asked, "Who died?" a voice said, "The president." He awoke troubled. 2 weeks later, he was gone. Mark Twain dreamed of his brother's body in a metal casket before it ever happened. When the dream came true, it wasn't just eerie, it was numinous. What are these dreams? Some scientists argue it's pattern recognition. The unconscious collects thousands of micro details we miss. It assembles a prediction in our sleep. Logical, but incomplete, because some dreams don't just predict outcomes, they predict emotions. A woman dreams she's trapped in a glass room. She can see her family outside, but no one hears her. Days later, she finds out she's adopted. The symbolism is uncanny, yes, but more importantly, it captured the feeling of being separate, unseen. Precognitive dreams may not always get the facts right, but they often capture the truth beneath them, the emotional landscape, the soul's forecast. Which begs a bigger question: what is time in the unconscious? In dreams, time is non-linear. Symbols collapse past, present, and future into one moment. This is why Jung said dreams don't just reflect, they anticipate, they prepare. A man dreams of falling. A week later, he's laid off. Was it about the job or the feeling of losing control? The dream didn't predict the event. It predicted the experience. This is the true magic of prophetic nightmares. They don't just forecast doom, they make us ready for it. They give us language for a future we haven't found words for. But here's the most empowering part. Some people change their lives because of these dreams. They cancel a trip, reconnect with a friend, get a checkup, and something shifts. The dream becomes not a sentence, but an invitation. to act, to awaken. And maybe that's the point. Jung believed the unconscious is not passive, it's creative, teleological. It wants wholeness, meaning, growth. So what looks like a nightmare about death might be a message about transformation. Dostoevsky wrote, "Man is a mystery. It needs to be unraveled." Prophetic nightmares pull at that thread. They do not whisper, they blaze. They arrive like thunder, and sometimes they save lives. Of course, not every nightmare is a prophecy, but every nightmare is a message. And some messages echo forward, so what should you do? Write them down, track them, honor them. Over time, you may notice symbols repeating: bridges, water, wolves, fires. They speak a language. Learn it. And if a dream unsettles you, don't dismiss it. Ask what it wants, because whether it foretells the future or simply prepares you for it, your nightmare is trying to help you survive something or become someone, the version of yourself who can face the fire, the one who wakes up changed. Thank you for walking this path through the darkness. Now that you've seen what nightmares really are, maybe the next time one comes, you'll turn to it and say, "I'm listening." So, what if your nightmares aren't broken dreams? What if they're broken truths trying to reach you? Maybe the monster under your bed isn't there to hurt you. Maybe it's a part of you you've forgotten. A part asking to come home. We spend our lives chasing happiness in the daylight. But maybe real transformation begins in the dark, where the psyche speaks in riddles, where healing wears a terrifying face, where the unconscious whispers, no, demands, wake up. If this journey stirred something in you, don't let it vanish with the morning light. Let's talk. Drop a comment. What's the most unforgettable dream or nightmare you've ever had? What did it show you? Or what is it still hiding? And if you felt something here, share this video. You never know who might be silently battling their own dream demons. Subscribe if you want more. We don't just tell stories here, we decode the soul. Until next.